There's a gateway in our minds that leads somewhere out there, far beyond this. Hey, so this is the Taproot Therapy Collective podcast. We're on video and also on the audio. So if we say something and you want to see the visual, you can check out the YouTube. But we have some exciting announcements. We have some good interviews coming up. A lot of them got kicked back either due to writer's strike or people being sick. So the podcast episodes have been a little bit slow. I hope to get a lot of stuff coming out around Christmas, and we're always welcome. We always welcome like suggestions if you guys know of a guest that would be good or are a guest that you think would be good, send me an email. But what's really exciting is we now have a new therapist and a new co-host to the podcast, because there are 5 other therapists at Taproot plus the QEG and neurostimulation, and then everyone in our referral network. But most of them are just kind of busy and don't want to do a podcast. It's not up their alley. They'll like it. But Alice wanted to do that, which is awesome, because we need another perspective and you guys don't have to listen to me as much. And I will have to write less think piece essays to read in my monotone voice. So I'll turn it over. Alice will be working at Taproot, hopefully in less than 90 days. But it will take at least that long to get a network with insurance. So it'll be coming up, probably after Christmas. But we're so happy to have you. It was kind of synchronistic how we met. You kind of came out of the blue as being a perfect fit for practice a little bit out there. So you want to say a little bit about your practice as a therapist and perspective? And I think today we're just going to have kind of a general conversation about the state of the industry and the way that it works and the way that we do therapy.
Yeah. I've had a kind of a roundabout experience. I felt like I've been, I'm a person who wanted to be a therapist since I was in young years. I had trauma around me that I didn't identify as trauma until way later, had to hit grad school before I was okay, fine. My childhood was really traumatic.
Trauma and intuition coming from the same part of the brain is a thing that we've made a lot of hay with. That you can't really tell the difference between a trauma response and intuition. But usually if you have childhood trauma, your intuition is very heightened, just kind of as a protective mechanism to try and see the future or understand people or keep yourself safe. But then that comes from trauma. So you usually are pretty effective if you deal with the trauma. But that's the trick, right? We all think we have, and then the shadow is still there a little bit. So I try and wear mine on my sleeve so I know where it is in the room. But
yeah, totally. It's very easy to, when you've been a victim of abuse and trauma, you suppress everything all your opinions and all your thoughts, because nobody's going to honor them. And you just kind of, like you said, you kind of start and you ignore your intuition, or you follow your intuition, but you use it for the wrong reasons. It's like you are so attuned to people.
Well, I think that intuitive personality type, like the magician, it's not immoral, it's amoral. I mean, you can use it unconsciously, and it's the same energy as the stand-up comedian or the con man or the grifter who's able to figure out who you are, what are you running from, how do I sell that to you to make it feel right. They're using what you need and not what you want to control you, whereas a therapist is giving you what you need and what you want to help you. But nurses, social workers, teachers, they're all those high intuitive feeler types when they do the MBTI or the intuition is really high. It's just, if it's unconscious, it's trying to figure out how to sell you a Rolex,
Right.
But the person who's able to stand up as a stand-up comedian and be like, all blankety blanks are like blankety blank. You ever notice that? And you're like, ooh, wow, you should. But that's true. I mean, they're seeing this systemic pattern that's not allowed, and
right. Right.
But I don't know.
It's like intuition gives you this. I don't know. It connects the dots in your neural pathways. At advanced level or very high vibrational level that is hard to. It's hard to intentionally train. You can't intentionally train it very well. It's just about differentiating, like you said, a trauma response versus intuition. That's the only way to really train it, I feel.
I had an analyst tell me one time, way back when I was in therapy, and she said something about it being really hard to see this stuff. I just didn't want to. I just kind of wanted to be normal. And And she was like, you can't turn it off. You have to learn how to hold it, but you can't turn that thing off, you know?
Right.
Which was hard to hear, because it is hard to hold.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I don't know. You hit sometimes you just hit a complete rock bottom, and then you realize it's your superpower. And that's kind of my story. I don't know. It felt like there was a lot of rock bottom in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but the field always lit me up totally. Like, especially like in grad school is very healing. And it's not a coincidence that I was also far away from my family and my systems that I'm a part of, in, the state where we're from. I went to school out in Colorado, and it was,
Where'd you go?
I went to University of Colorado. I was at Boulder for my undergrad, and, the counseling psychology program is in Denver. I
wonder if you were in school with my cousins. They were out there at the same time. They weren't counseling. They were like welding and art. And one of them's an art professor out there now, or a welding professor. And then another one works professionally as a metallurgist. They fly around and do big staircases and things. But yeah, they were all out there at the same time. Their last name is Blackstock. So
yeah.
I
always feel like I never know anybody that.
Well, it's a big place. I mean, I went to Swanee, so it's like technically 2,000 students, but like you knew everybody. Even if you didn't meet them, you knew what kind of food they liked because you'd seen them in the cafeteria, once a week at least. Like Swanee was so tiny and such a weird place.
Yeah. Well, it was strange. I mean, at CU, there's like maybe 5. When I was there were maybe 5 people from Alabama. And it's like you just sort of knew, you caught on to who the other people were.
Mm-hmm.
They're from Alex City, which I thought was so random. Like, how in the world did you end up at CU? And he would drive back for the Auburn, Georgia game, like every 2 weeks into school, drive all the way to Alabama to see that game, and then drive all the way back. And it's like,
yeah, the football is Mecca thing is pretty unique to Alabama. I mean, they like sports enough to like have a riot and burn down the city in other college towns.
Oh, yeah,
but there's not people in their 60s like making a pilgrimage just to touch the grass on the quad. I don't know. It has more of a religious element in Alabama for sure.
Yeah, the religion's more about skiing and snowboarding out there.
It is. It really, like, when I remember knowing people who were like, oh, your dad's from Colorado. When are you going to take your daughter skiing? And I was like, well, she's like 1.5. I don't know. Like, if I go skiing and she wants to go, maybe. But and you would go on the ramp, and there would be people who.
So your dad was from Colorado?
Yeah, he was. Well, my dad's family was military, so they moved everywhere. And then the last stop when I guess my grandmother and my granddad got divorced was Colorado. So she stayed there. So that was kind of the last home he had, I guess. But he was in Huntsville, and he was everywhere.
Oh, okay.
So he never, as soon as he made friends, he'd have to leave. And I think, it was kind of a hard way to grow up. But then his brother stayed out there, and his brother recently passed away. He's a really nice guy. He had a construction company. And so he has 3 boys, and
wow.
Those are my cousins, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, what is it? You said something I wanted to jump back to.
We were talking about skiing and snowboarding being like.
Yeah, when I was even as a kid, I'd go up there, and there's people that like literally had a 1.5-year-old baby in a suspender thing, so you had to hold it because it can't do anything, in skis, like in between their legs, like getting them ready for that. It was like they really like it. They like live to do it. So
yeah, the little ones are better. Like they don't use the pole when you're really little, so they're just like buzzing around on their skis.
Yeah,
grown-ups.
Yeah, my dad always wanted to take ski trips, and we were all from Alabama and didn't know how to do it. So
oh yeah,
I passingly know how to, but I'm not gonna win any contest.
Yeah, I can talk about it, but I really didn't go that much. And yeah, you have to get up really early, and it's so cold, and
it's really expensive too.
Ski lifts are very anxiety provoking.
Yeah. The ski lifts were like the most fun part to me, but the waiting 4 hours to be on the ski lift was not, at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I guess, you're coming into our practice, and we kind of discovered that we were kind of in the same world. Our practice is a little bit niche for the area, maybe for everywhere. But Can you say a little bit about like your style and kind of what brought you into it and the things that you fused? Because it sounds like, and especially going back to your bio, like some of the older stuff from when you were in private practice, before is like still there.
Yeah.
And it looks like kind of what happened to you happened to, or kind of what happened to me happened to you, where you go into therapy, you come out of grad school and you're like, I'm going to be this kind of therapist. And then, 2 months in, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't work. I don't like that. And then you end up doing, something that you never really would have thought just because you want to help people and it's working.
Yeah.
And you end up going in this new direction.
Yeah. It's like the clients in your community are different, like the community of people that I would have been working with in Colorado are very different than the community here. So it's I don't know. It's interesting. Like the groups of people who gravitate towards therapy, for example, kind of, and like I was doing very purist family and couples work. And I even
you were using Gottman at that point, the Gottman method.
Gottman and emotionally focused therapy, like Sue Johnson.
Yeah. I like EFT. I've never seen the test. I've known people that did it, but Gottman, I was always kind of curious. I'd always wondered what you thought of that. Cause I mean, for people unfamiliar, and correct me where I'm wrong, cause I don't do it, but it's like a test basically, which is pretty good for the Gottman Institute. I imagine it's lucrative, but the couple actually does a test that they have to pay the Institute for. And then they send the results to the patients and the therapists. And it's like, this is where you're good in the relationship. This is where you need work.
Yeah.
And it's this whole kind of screener.
I didn't experience that way. The Gottman stuff is great. They give you a huge book. It's extremely evidence-based, which is like very hard evidence-based, where he's been in a lab, like has a lab where couples come and stay there for like a couple of weeks, and he's been doing this for like 40 years, where they code every single interaction of the couples in like a set up apartment, and like they have a breakfast room and everything, and they record everything. And so they have all these statistics about
science reality TV.
Yeah. They have all these, this amazing statistics and relational work about different behaviors and what predicts divorce in married couples. You can predict like within a 96% accuracy which couples are going to still be together in 5 years versus which couples are not, without intervention. So, and if you intervene and so there are a lot of assessments that you can use for Gottman. Do it. I never did it where you had to send something in. So
everyone that I've ever known in this area that did it, that's what they did, is the patient came in and then they made the patient like log on to the website. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, and like pay the Institute. I don't know what, $50 or something. Like, and then they did the test in the first session. And then when the results came back, they were like, okay, this is what we're working on. But that's the only way I'd ever encountered it. Schema therapy is kind of like that too. Isn't the Schema Institute like you do a test, but they're in control of the test? You can't just buy the test and apply it yourself. You have to kind of pay the Institute.
Well, with the Gottman, if I have like a stack of assessments like this thick, and I myself put, then you're supposed to be able to use them for anybody. So, and it's not like it's not like one big test. There's like a page that evaluates this, page that evaluates that. And it's more like checklists that you then, there's not like, they're not coded. Like there's not you don't get a score on it. It's all intuitively interpreted, at least when I did it. But I trained like 15 years ago. So maybe they have a very good brand. And their stuff is really solid. Like I love their stuff. It doesn't have like a work perspective on couples. It's generalizable to any population, same-sex couples. Like it is, I like it a lot. And I found that this is one thing that people say, and I found also to be true, is that kind of the stereotypical like man who gets dragged to couples therapy by his partner, that sort of person loves the Gottman stuff because it's very concrete and like is able to put into context these concepts that a lot of people who are way more like concrete, think black and white thinkers don't. It's much easier to grasp. It's like, oh, okay, here's some actual tools, and here's, what I'm actually doing that's causing this thing. I mean, it gives you some action oriented work on, but yeah, it's kind of just informs my perspective. I was working for a while where I did the assessments, and then it just kind of it gets clunky to me. Like that's part of.
Generally, therapists start with tons of assessments. Like everyone I knew right out of school, including me, it was like, oh, suicide screener, this. And then when you've done it enough times, it's kind of in your head, and you do it for court or for liability or for, the patient's request. But you kind of learn the assessment enough that you're not just covering up patients with paper. In my experience, I mean, not that that's the right way to do it.
And this is another, like, I've really found that, like in school, we learned that we were really taught everything over us. Like once we got into practice, everything was over a solution focused kind of framework where we're all we could be doing something like narrative therapy, which is very, very deep and wordy and takes a long time. Narrative therapy, or
a lot of art and stickers and billboards and books and yarn and narrative therapy.
No, I don't use yarn, but just like really focusing on people's language and helping them restory their memories and things like that. But with the assessment, I just always felt like, it's really we had learned that it's people get the effect of therapy within 10 to 12 sessions. And then after that, it's not, like the results show it's no longer really effective. I don't think that now I'm like, okay, that's
cognitive therapy. The patient probably absorbs everything that you can say on the script. In
I mean,
20 sessions, I would think.
But it's like you work with somebody who's dissociating, and it can take like 15 sessions for you to see, for their parts to be comfortable, even like kind of creeping out. When you're doing a standard.
Yeah, because the more vulnerable and kind of repressed parts don't even feel safe for a long time.
Yeah, it's really about the relationship. But then other clients, I really tried not to practice in a way where I was expecting people to just keep coming indefinitely. Like I was trying to help people get better and move on. And so sometimes it just really would feel like, okay, I feel like they've gotten the benefit of this work right now where they are within like 3 sessions or within.
Yeah, it is wild that you say this one thing sometimes and it's like you're done,
Yeah.
And then other times it doesn't work like that. But I mean, I think we both agree on like push the patient into the bad place, teach them to be independent, to not run from it, that like, and then go forward and be careful, you're not pushing people into things they're not ready for. But the goal of therapy is really to internalize your own wisdom. And sometimes as a parent, sometimes as a shaman, sometimes as a friend, or just a kind of voice of other language, you internalize the therapist's voice in your head and you decide which parts are you and which parts are not. Because, I'm different from my patients. They're not supposed to just believe everything I believe or think everything I think. Right. And then it's there and you're independent and you're good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's, that's where it's like the assessments, like when using your first few sessions to throw assessments at people, you lose, it's like the critical period of,
you lose patience.
Help them. Yeah. You lose the possibility of connecting with them in the way that, so I don't know.
I think you went to school in the 90s probably has a trauma response to Scantron sheets, I would imagine.
Yeah, I sure do.
And the thing that is interesting to me is, you're talking about Gottman being evidence-based, and we talk a lot about using evidence-based practice as it exists, like accepting research for what it is. And I like research. I mean, I pull academic journals all the time and read this stuff. But I also understand the role that research has. And I think both of our criticism is that sometimes people use it to turn off their brain. Like you're saying that they told you in school, 12 sessions of therapy, anything beyond that, you're not getting anything out of. Well, I believe that, but that's based on when I'm doing psychoeducation and ego management strategies and cognitive therapy, you absorbed all that by 12 to 15 sessions. Right. So the research can measure that because that's objective, that can be turned into a number. But when you start saying like, well, there's a vulnerable part of the client where I saw another side of them where you can't turn that into a number, but that's still part of therapy, so I want to make room for that in therapy too. that isn't something that research can do. A case study can do that, you know?
Right.
And that's kind of why my criticism of the way that we do academics now is that we don't even really read research journals to be read by people. We read them to make careers. We write them to be cited by, because your
Yeah.
impact factor, my pay as a professor and my salary is based on my impact factor. Like the impact factor is for the journal. I forget what the metric is, but basically the more somebody cites your papers,
Right. Yeah.
the better your number is, which, you know, kind of makes sense. But what happens is no one writes a case study because not everyone's going to cite that. What they're going to do is be like, we extrapolated 10 different sets of data and then controlled them for different variables. And you cite everything and you have this giant, what do they call them? Like, you know, analytical review of multiple studies. So then more studies have to cite that. But you read them and it's like, this is not helping anyone do therapy better. This is written for someone to cite it. And it's like when you land on those pages on the internet that you're like, oh, this was written for Google to read. It's not written for a human to read. It's being like, "You therapist area, are you hungry?" But you know, just really kind of looks like an AI wrote it.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, like in the broader public sphere, that there is this people who don't know what the words mean are declaring that they want evidence on, where's your evidence? Where's your peer-reviewed papers to back up this claim? Like people who don't actually know.
But it's a concept you can't peer review, but it's still kind of intuitive and useful.
Like, what nobody has access to. Like, okay, you can look up research on Google, but it is not the same as being in a university library and having access to all the databases. Like the real research is accessed through people who are in academia. It's like you can't even be a person walking around.
Yeah, those subscriptions are $800 a month if you want to get a Cohost or something. Yeah. I mean, we paid to access some of them for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't just I've tried, you can't just join a university library. Like you can't, there's not an option to do that. As far even CU, I was like, well, as an alum, shouldn't they let me be able to be a library member? No.
Well, a lot of people will teach a class if they want to keep a foot in the door with research. They'll just teach one college class as an adjunct or something.
Yeah.
Just to get access to the library, because once you have that email, you can log into the university. But if you don't, you can't.
Well, yeah, totally. And it's. Oh, I just lost my. Oh, and I mean, so there's the effect of people need to write research in order to get tenure and those types of you're talking about. And then it's like you realize that it's like the only things that get funding are the things that schools want to fund.
Which is pretty trendy too. I mean, science is as trendy as like English or something, where it's like braided narrative is now in. Oh, now semantic. Now sematics are the thing that you do in the English department. It changes. I mean, science does the same thing. Like it just is kind of fad chasing.
Yeah.
In the way it's funded, not in the the discipline itself. If it was followed, scientifically.
Yeah, it's like the powers that be decide what the perspective of the school is going to be, and then you identify somebody who will do research to back up that opinion, and then you fund. Or, and it's really also based on who are the people who are giving money to the school, the big corporations, and that dictates what studies are funded and not. And
we tend to only research things that we already think we know the answer to in order to prove that. And then when it proves us wrong, we don't change. Evidence, exhibit A is the DARE program, right? You have Nancy Reagan being like, we're on drugs, whatever, instead of, education or something that was, kind of useful or funding or kind of meeting the needs of these communities. Let's just go, scare kids straight with DARE. And then they kind of tried to make DARE different later on. But whatever change they made, we researched DARE for a decade. It made kids do more drugs. If you took a school that didn't have a DARE program and then you did a DARE program, drug use went up. And then you could compare that to, and there was no way around it. I mean, the research said that. And they kept being like, oh, maybe we need to control for that. No, the DARE program didn't work. It made kids do drugs. Did we quit doing the DARE program? No. Because we kept throwing more money at research to try and get the study to say that actually it worked. And it just didn't work.
Yeah, you get really disillusioned because it's like then you you learn that we know best practice for all these things, like in education, for example, and then you figure out, well, it's nobody who is a teacher or in education really gets to make the calls about what they study in schools. You know, it's
Oh,
a
education is the worst for
little
the way
boy.
that research is used that like that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they'll come into education and they'll like every bit of data that we have going back to the beginning of research says even if the teacher is not good, even if the teacher is incompetent, if the classroom is smaller, the kids will do better. Just hire more teachers, pay
mhm,
teachers. And that's never what they've done. All the research has
right,
said that. It works 100 times. What they do is they go in and they're like, oh, well, Pearson Hall has this information technology, communications education platform, and
yeah,
it's 2 points better than the one by Epson that's Plato. So we need to switch to the Blackboard program. Well, okay, you're talking about these incremental tiny gains for millions and millions and millions of dollars where
right,
you know that it's going to be 65% more effective if you just hire teachers and you don't have 35 kids in a classroom, you know?
right.
But
Uh,
they're not doing research to figure out what works. They're doing research to figure out how to justify the payments to these giant corporations.
mhm,
And I mean, this isn't to knock on research. I mean, studying cause and effect is inherently helpful. We're talking about what the ethics outside of the study. And like in
yeah,
graduate school, you learn, oh, the ethics of the study, all this, whatever. They're talking about inside the study. But the ethics of who funded it, how's it used, where's it coming from? We just turn our brains off and act like anything that comes out of these journals is magic. And I just, it's strange. I don't,
yeah,
I mean, I like research for what it is, but it is what it is, you know?
right, right. Yeah, and I went through the whole application process for PhDs and PsyDs, which went fine. like I, but it was just like the experience of that, where it's just like you have to look through the professors' research, like the professors who work in each individual program, look at what their research background is, and find someone who sounds like they might match up with what you want to study. So it's like you have to find somebody in the country who wants to study the same thing as you're interested in, which, by the way, there's nobody, as far for whatever it was that I was
Yeah.
like at. So then it ends up that you tailor all of your applications to, okay, well, that guy has interest
Hmm.
in his bio, but I have to write a completely different essay saying I want to do this kind of research for this program. And
Well, and just the amount of abuse and corruption in those systems where people, I mean, just the idea that you have to work for free, I don't think is right. And then
right,
two, or not
right,
even work for free, you're paying to work.
right,
You're
right.
doing work for these guys. But then the amount of professors that, financially, sexually, I mean, there's just you see all this that system, the power is so lopsided
Mhm.
that even if it's not that everybody is bad, but it's just enabling the worst behavior.
Right,
Um, and
right.
just the competitiveness of it, that you're never safe because all these people, more than anyone else in the world about this teeny tiny little area, and all the other people who know as much as you do about that teeny tiny little area are fighting for your job. So
Right.
I mean, that just seems lonely and sad. I don't know.
Ah,
I mean, and it's not it's not like everywhere in academia is like that, but it is a trend that I think, look at the 70s
I don't
onward, it
know.
gets worse. Go ahead.
I said, I don't know. It seems like
Yeah.
it is kind of like everywhere is like that. But
Well, and what gets me though, when you're saying like using research for what it is, sometimes intuitive concepts and soft sciences are inevitable, and even in hard sciences, like intuitive concepts and metaphors are used, right? But it's like you get so much flack because like I'll write something and then somebody will send me an email and be like, "Well, you shouldn't have a license because you said the unconscious, and the unconscious is not evidence based." And it's like, what does that mean? Like, you guys said that the unconscious doesn't exist, we're
right,
just the ego, that's all we are. And now you're going back and being like, well, Carl Jung was still wrong, and I'm never going to admit that. It's the same professors too. I mean, these guys have been publishing since the 80s, but now it's trendy to talk about trauma. So they're like, well, there's primary, secondary, and tertiary memory, or there's implicit memory that is nonverbal and shows
yeah,
up as a symbol from the body brain as a trauma response. And you're like, oh, you mean like an unconscious? Like,
right,
what this you're it's a semantic distinction, but they're not ever going to say I'm wrong or I was wrong, you know.
yeah. Well, and I mean, it's just so the emperor's new clothes, because guess what? You can't prove anything. Like, there is no, you can't prove anything. Everything in hard physics is a theory. Like, it's
Well,
not.
the same thing that will happen when
That's
you.
just what it is.
Yeah, like the same people who say, well, the unconscious doesn't have a space or whatever. I'll be like, okay, let's look at what you're writing. And I'll look on their LinkedIn article and they're like, well, self-esteem is this new concept. And you're like, self-esteem is still a metaphor. Like, you can't distill this into a tube. Self-esteem's not evidence-based. Like, what
Right.
but it's a useful metaphor that helps people understand the phenomenology of how we think and helps them break the self into parts to feel it and then get better. So if it works, what does it matter if I can't empirically validate every single part of the process? We can study the process and see if it works. Like Exhibit A, antipsychotics. We spend all this money trying to figure out why antipsychotics work. We know they work. You're never going to tell somebody with schizophrenia who apparently schizophrenia, go off your medication, because we don't really know exactly why this works yet, right? But we spend all this money about the dopamine theory of schizophrenia. 10 years later, turns out we know less about why those work. Now it's sensory gating is like the primary theory on it. But we spent all that money to figure out that we don't really know what our guess about why we thought it worked is wrong. But we still prescribe antipsychotics because we know that as a method, they are effective. Not as a method, they're effective, even if we don't understand exactly what's happening. So when you study IFS or EFT or any of these things, yes, you can't validate every little vocabulary word that I have to use. And most of it's going to be semantic anyway, but like, that those things are effective because a patient with PTSD went into it and then 65% of them got better on the other side versus this other model, but they don't want to do that kind of research.
Yeah.
And even the people who do research it's like they don't get that. I don't understand.
I know. Well, I think they're so defensive because you have to be so defensive about yourself to even get to be successful in that area, that it's like those people don't want to admit that the whole field is like basically a sham. I'm sorry to say.
Well, it's not even like soft science. Like the thing is, like, you're going to run into intuitive concepts and metaphors in soft science inevitably, but even in very hard sciences, they're still there. I mean, you sit in 5th grade and they tell you, okay, well, here's the atom. It's a circle and it has to have the same amount of protons as electrons. And so the atom's happy when the hydrogen gets 1 electron, and then it isn't happy when it doesn't, whatever. That's all completely made up. Like, there's subshells where a particle is popping in and out of existence and you're calculating a fraction of a possibility of where it might be. The atom's not happy. It's not happy. Like, there's not a circle where there's 2 protons and then we're going to dot 2 electrons. That's what you teach people to start to understand the balance of forces in the natural world when they're in 5th grade. Like, but no one's going into, the 5th grade classroom and being like, that's not evidence-based. Why don't you, show them the CERN data? Like,
Right. Oh my gosh.
Because you're building a bridge where they're starting to help them understand how these things interact, and that's that's a metaphor. It's not true. It's not true. The atom's not happy. There's not 2 electrons in a hoop around 2 protons, and then they cancel out the electric force. That isn't how atoms work.
Yeah.
But we still use that to start to understand how these vastly complicated systems work in order to use them. And it's just sitting with that uncertainty causes a certain kind of clinician so much anxiety that they really want to run back to a model and say, well, I did this right, but not wrong. And I think that's where you start to get unethical, because I never feel like I did it right or perfect. I'm always running cases and being like, what do I not know? What could I have done different? What could I have seen coming?
Yeah.
And I'm not, the best clinician out there, but I'm trying to be better all the time. And you lose that ability when it's just, well, I'm going to read this book or do the CE and I'm going to do what they said, I think.
Yeah. You get out of touch. That's when you lose track of your intuition, which is the thing that you can't study or manufacture. That's when, you just get so consumed and having to do things exactly like this person is saying. But you can't ever do that, though, because as you're saying, I mean, it kind of gets to the point of like all language is metaphor. Language is just how we structure all of our thought. But language isn't evidence-based. It's just arbitrary like categorization of different concepts in our lives, and we've like created sound to signal to other people that we're thinking about this thing. But
I think like there was some guy that was going off on Twitter that was like, no one, you say that you attack somebody's semantics or the way that they're using symbolic language when you don't like their point, right? But like, so, you know, he was like, you know, you can never do this, and like you should only just be terribly literally. Metaphors are for weak losers that are you know, illogical and are ruled by emotion or whatever. Occam's razor, blah blah blah. And it's like Occam didn't have a razor. That is a metaphor that a philosopher made. Like you did the thing like at the end of your post.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, and what I would say before, I mean, an electron, like that's it's like a way that we like kind of describe this type of energy, but there's not like a little thing there. Like it's not, I mean, and how do you even define what a thing is? Because there's, you know, all energy is diffuse, and there's really not a difference between you and everything that's around you. So I mean,
I'd be curious to see what you thought of this, because this is something that like I've played around with for a little bit. Is like, because I really like the history of the profession and reading all of it, even the weirdest models. Like I love like to curl up by the fire with like the models that I really don't like, that all came out in like the 90s when in healthcare and insurance is getting really corporatized. And so everything had like solution focused or brief or time limited or like crisis centered in front of it, you know, like because they were trying to make it shorter. But I think the models, kind of the way they fit together, they all seem to break down to me on like two axes. Like one is, you know, ego versus like unconscious subcortical brain. So, you know, something like CBT is very ego management strategies. It's very ego based on that axis. Whereas something like, you know, a Jungian analysis or whatever is dealing, you know, only with the unconscious. You know, it's a depth psychology. And then the other axis is that, is it analytical, where the provider has all the power and they're telling you, oh, you smoke cigarettes because your mom made you orally fixated? Or is it experiential? Are you being like, I don't know what you're feeling or why you're doing it, but I'm going to push you into that feeling? And so something like Gestalt therapy is going to be incredibly experiential, or brain spotting is experiential. You're pulling this person into a feeling. I don't even know what they're feeling, you know? I'm just pulling them into that so that the brain can heal itself. And I have faith that on the other side of facing this thing, whereas analytical is, well, maybe your jaw's locking up because they wouldn't let you talk in school, and so you learned, you know. But they, to me, that's the axis that you can put all the models on and see kind of how somebody's thinking. If that makes sense. And what do you think about that? Or I don't know, is that wrong?
No, I mean, I think so. I mean, they're all just kind of different ways of looking at the same thing. That's always kind of what we get back to. And like when you're saying like solution focused, it's a way that it was like it's a reaction to insurance companies. And so then we have research that backs it up, and who's really funding that research, and what schools is it from, and where do they get their funding? And where does Big Pharma giving their funding? You know, it's all linked.
Well, I mean, the reason I think those axes are useful, though, is that they are all the models are trying to do the same thing, and that you get people to feel better and change behavior. But there's different parts of, I think, phenomenology of consciousness that the inventors of the models or the people who gravitate to them don't want to sit with, you know? Like even, you know, Irvin Yalom's the existential therapy guy. A ton of people come to therapy because of Yalom. But he still is so analytical. Like he really like he's very kind of ego based thinking about this. I mean, he has that quote in one of his books about how he went to see like a somatic medicine person and he didn't get any change at all, and he doesn't think that works. But the most helpful thing the guy said was at the very end of it, he was like, well, if the meditation like doesn't help you sleep, just remember that you can always get a gun and shoot yourself. And then Yalom was like, oh, wow. And that really put things in perspective for me and whatever. And it's like, you're kind of telling on yourself. You went into not an analytical ego language place. You went into a felt experience of like, maybe I really don't matter too much on this. And Yalom's brilliant. You know, I'm not like critiquing him, but he is very suspicious of anything that is not able to be understood in language. You know, he's an existential guy. He likes existential philosophy, and is very kind of mind over matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Or where you know, where do you fall in your practice after having done this for, I mean, you've been a therapist for what, 10 years?
Yeah, something around there. I started out really trying to be like extremely evidence-based, but I was also, I think evidence-based can mean stuff like narrative therapy and emotionally focused therapy. There are so many different practices that are evidence-based that we don't.
Motion focused therapy is pretty researchable. I mean, it's incredibly evidence based. That's all the people that are like, well, you have to do CBT because it's the gold standard for this. It's like, well, not in these areas. EFT is actually outranking it. So why aren't you doing that one if you're really
Right.
following the research as much as you're saying? I mean,
Right.
Sue Johnson proved if you just take the partner's loved one, or you put the patient's loved one in the room, their outcomes are like 50% better. The person
Right.
doesn't have to say anything. Just somebody who they love going to therapy with them makes it better. But we
Yeah.
don't do that as a profession. You know, we don't. Most people are like, I'm an individual therapist. I'm not going to see your partner, or, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and her work really, really, that was a big learning about attachment and the way that she taught it was a huge turning point for me. And when I went to a training with her in grad school, it was just like everything fell into place when I saw Sue Johnson talk. She is so moving. And it just felt like, and I was so into couples, and it felt, oh my gosh, this is it. And this is it for I mean, talking about attachment and attachment injuries. And I think, and so that work just, I mean, that was like the backbone of most of how I practiced, because that was the way I studied. That was in couples work, but I brought it to families. And I love working with systems of relationships, i.e. couples and families. It's so powerful, but it's just very hard to actually get people to do it in the way that's effective. Like you can't, like family therapy, you're supposed to have every single person in the family in the room, no matter what the issue is.
And an empty chair if they are not there, if they have the flu that week or something.
Right, exactly.
For people react to their presence even though they're not there.
Yeah, and when I worked in Colorado in community setting and in diversion, I would get juvenile diversion where it was like teenagers who would get in trouble for stuff, and we had an amazing program, and they put all this funding into the counseling, diversion counseling. And so we got to, like, as therapists, we got to basically do any type of therapy we wanted, and they got free indefinite therapy that none of the courts monitored or saw any of it. But I got to do like really cool family work, and it wasn't requiring, it wasn't mandating that people have to be there. It was just the one kid. But then I ended up doing like couples work with their parents and things like that, and just was seeing like amazing results so quickly for these kids. But then I come back here and to Alabama, and like nobody wants to take their whole family to therapy. Like, and it's sort of hard, and it's hard to, and I'm from here. So I get that it's like that is very outside of what anyone, it's just not something people think to do, or it's just not in the canon of how people are here. You can
groups too. I mean, there were a couple of practices that were good, and they tried to do these IOP groups and different things, and it just, people don't get it. I mean, we have this conception in Alabama that group therapy is AA, and that's it.
Yeah, and AA is not that. That's
AA is not group therapy, but it's like people just think if you're sitting in a circle, you have to be in recovery. And I mean, group therapy, I don't know, insurance doesn't pay for it here, which is probably part of what started to kill it. Now they're wanting to pay for it again.
Oh, they are?
Because it's effective. Yeah, they're trying to get people to do groups.
Save money. Yeah.
Well, there was just that whole period where it was like, we'll just tell people, we'll give people Band-Aids and it'll get them out faster. And then it ends up not treating trauma actually is a lot more expensive. So now it's kind of moving back the other way.
Yeah. Groups are a great example. I never even tried to practice. I mean, with groups as part of my private practice, just because it was like knowing how you actually make a good group. You're supposed to have this set number of people between these between 8 to 10 people is ideal. And it's supposed to be the same people show up for a certain amount of time. But all the groups here are run where it's just like anyone can show up to this group about postpartum depression. It happens every day, blah, blah, blah. And you don't get the same group of people there. And the whole point of how group therapy works is that it's, you're
kind of creating a family.
You're creating a family, and everybody serves as like an archetype for what's going on in your subconscious. And And same with like family work and couples work, but groups don't work like that here in general, like you're saying. And it seems like it's like even I found I got very disillusioned with feeling like it's like the therapists don't even, most therapists that I talk to, or all therapists that I talk to, don't know that even. They don't even know, like they weren't even educated about like how a group should be run, for example. And people,
we didn't get any, well, I guess we did have a group therapy thing in my master's program, and it's, if you get any of it, it's all based on Yalom. I mean, his book is still the book.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But it's like people don't, and like couples work and family work. I got pretty frustrated feeling like people were doing couple and family work who don't actually know what they're doing with couples and families, because I really do that in couple and family work, you know, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but you treat the relationship instead of the individuals. And so, and it's extreme, especially with families. It's so powerful to work like that, but it's just, I don't know. It's tough to get people to keep showing up, and and men don't want to go to therapy. You know, it's just this whole.
Well, and I think therapy in general has just gotten a lot harder. It's gotten more expensive. You know, a lot of those trauma modalities, like, I mean, I'm coming off the second wave of ETT, and it's just like, I'm out. I don't know how long it'll take to make that money back. And I had a wait list before I did the training. I did it because I wanted to be a better therapist, but it's not like it was making me more marketable. I already was full.
Right.
So it's like you carry these thousands of dollars of these new trauma modalities, you know, the 4 phases of brain spotting or whatever. That works, and it's like a second master's degree. So I mean, therapy overall has gotten a lot more expensive. Insurance is less. Blue Cross still does a pretty good job, but most insurance is more reticent to pay for different things. People are just working 2 and 3 jobs because the economy is different. When do I go to therapy? I mean, I have that issue where I want to see my therapist really more than I'm able to.
Yeah.
And so when you have an entire family schedule, I mean, how do you? It's like we can't even eat dinner together. When are we going to go to therapy?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because they have to be at a certain time. You know, it has to be like after work. And what I was thinking. I mean, you're talking about something that's. It's just like I've sort of gotten to where I feel like it, like does it feel like the whole field is sort of this pyramid scheme? Like it's sort of turned into this pyramid scheme where it's like, okay, in order to be successful, you need to keep adding on these trainings and paying these, you know, pay the Gottmans this much money to use this practice, which whereas like the boards are going to tell us like, it's not evidence-based if you're not doing this therapy, that you're going to have to pay this much money to even say you're doing. It's just,
that is so something that I am really turned off by some of those models, is you can read the book and understand the system and see what he's doing. But I mean, some of those trainings, they're like, okay, you can pay $2,000 and you can do level 1 through 3, but you can't even say that you do this model without getting sued by me until you've gotten this, whatever. And it's like, man, no, like, you know, I don't know.
And like mental health practitioners do not have money for, you know, it's like, we already don't, you know, we don't make any money, like, which is fine, but it just feels very victimizing of people who already, I mean, then not to mention the clients, like,
well, just the microtransactions on everything that modernity is kind of moving the economy towards, where it's like you can't own the movie, you can't own the whatever, you just have to pay $20 to every streaming service ever, all the time. And you know, I mean, it's not just therapy. I mean, a lot of these realities just are cross industry, but and
it's like, well, so what did we pay for to have our degree and our license? Because it's like that doesn't.
Well, and at least for the masters I went to, I mean, you really didn't learn how to do therapy in school. I mean, I was trying to take classes and read books, and which is expensive, you know, academic books, to know how to do therapy for 4 years so that I could do it, because I didn't feel like, you know, the couple classes on CBT and DBT that I got in school were going to prepare me to do anything.
Yeah. Well, I did feel like my program was really, really great for actually learning therapy. And I don't know if that was a function of it being a CPCE, counseling psychology and counselor education program, which I didn't even really know the distinction before I went into my program, and then figured out that it was like, oh, I really like that. It's like preparing you to either be a therapist or teach therapists how to do
Mm-hmm.
and if you like the history of psychology and stuff, it's like so much fun to study how therapy
Mm-hmm.
a way that you could like help other therapists. It's so fascinating. And it was, I felt very, very prepared. And we were counselors in the university counseling center where we had like glass and people and our peers like watched us through the glass and on a
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the
family.
LPC programs, you definitely get way more therapy stuff. Only because it's what they do. Whereas social work's huge. I mean, I could manage a nonprofit. I could work with geriatrics. I could be on a psych ward. So there's all it's the difference in whatever. But I think that the upside is you come out of school knowing how to do therapy as an LPC, which is nice. And one of the downsides is you can't really do anything else. So there's some people who sort of get tired of doing therapy or don't really like people, but then they are an LPC, so they can't go do the short job. So they're kind of that's one of the, you want to be really sure that you want to do therapy forever before you agree. Because I can reinvent myself and hop around, as a social worker into different a ton of different areas.
So true.
But
true.
Really not a ton of social workers are working in therapy exclusively.
Yeah.
It is mostly social workers at Taproot, though. Christy and Marie are all.
I feel like in Alabama, I just feel, and in Colorado, there were like, it's so different state to state. That's another part of kind of what we're talking about. It is it's which licenses are the good ones to have, or is different state to state. Like I feel like my LMFT is not that big of a. It's not that super valuable in Alabama.
Insurance don't pay for it. Like the LMFTs that want to bill for insurance, what you have to do is say, well, this is the identified patient, and that's the collateral patient who's there to come to help this patient's goals. But if you divorce or something, only the patient has the right to the medical record, and then you bill it as individual therapy. I don't do marriage counseling, but that's what most of the marriage counselors do if it's covered by insurance.
Right.
Which I don't know. That's going to make it a lot harder for LMFTs to have a big marriage and family therapy practice.
Unless you but then if you're in somewhere like Colorado, LMFTs are paid more than everybody else. Paid more than workers
in California.
And I was going to say California,
So, California, you throw.
But I do feel like workers are way more in Alabama, way more. I don't know. It's bigger, but I don't know. I feel like they're more respected in Alabama. But
yeah, you do definitely want to know the state you're moving to, and the state you're in when you're going to school. Because school's so expensive now, you just don't want to get the wrong degree.
Right.
I was wondering, could you say anything about brain spotting when Alice starts with us? She'll have the brain spotting training like everybody else that does the individual adult therapy at Taproot. So you had tried a little bit of it and then decided to get the training. Do you want to say anything about the experience, or you want to kind of wait till you're out of training? Or I don't know. I was just wondering if you could give people who are listening who may want to come see you that are local or some information about.
Yeah, I have not done the training yet, so I'm not. My blurb is not going to be, but I am excited about. I love. My practice kind of led me into more trauma-based. Are you still there?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Okay, trauma-based therapy. Like I ended up having a lot of women who were coming to me with history of sexual abuse, whether it's people presenting for eating disorders, people presenting for depression, people presenting for all these different things. And then it's like, actually, okay, everyone has sexual trauma apparently. So I think it's like there's so much trauma that people just don't even know how to begin to get into, like to acknowledge that it's there, or really even like identify it as trauma. Like like my like my mom, I was trying to like if my mom was going to watch this or not. Like my mom had an abuser when she was little. And when I finally found out about it, it's like, she's just sort of like, she didn't identify it as abuse. Like she didn't say it like that. It's like this was a creepy tennis teacher who blah, blah, like touched her. And I don't know, but it's like something she thinks sort of is funny. And it's like, no, you were like 10. Like, that's not right. But people kind of, and so it would never occur.
That's what's interesting. Those defensive parts, when you're doing brain spotting, they flare up. And one of the things that one of the reactions that because the patient feels embarrassed, and I'm always like, no, this is qualified, and you help make room for it. One of the most common reactions with the most traumatized people is their body feels all sweaty and hot, and like they don't want to re-experience the thing, and then they start laughing, and then they can't stop laughing. But going back into that place, that's this pretty strong defensive reason is to laugh.
Is my mother for sure.
The brain spotting will pull you through it. I'm like, no, just laugh as much as you need to. We're still gonna go through. The person's like, I'm sorry, I'm taking it seriously. I'm not laughing at you. And I'm like, I understand. I've done it myself. Like, let's go through.
Yeah. I mean, I really have come around to being. This is part of what I was disillusioned with, was just so many of our all of the approaches, besides maybe EMDR, are so based in like, you need to be able to put into words what happened to you, and you need to
even like with EMDR though, you're starting
and what
the analysis of it. Well, even with EMDR, you're still like, what is the happy belief? Let's replace. What's the bad belief? Let's replace it. As soon as they start to feel anything, you're talking. Whereas with brain spotting, you talk as long as you need to get them to go down there. But once they're there, be quiet and get out of the way. Let them go.
Yeah.
The deep brain knows what it's for. But it was like EMDR, I always felt like, because I mean, it works. EMDR works. And it was the best tool that I had when I was first coming out of school. But for very, very traumatized people or dissociation, it's like you're fighting past those defenses for so long with these eye movements. I mean, I was doing 2-hour sessions sometimes. And it's effective, but brain spotting was more effective for more people, more of the time, more profoundly. And I'm always looking for what is the kind of biggest net.
Yeah. Dogs are barking.
That's okay. You can let them in.
Yeah, I think it's just I think being through having a profound. So I had a lot of trauma growing up. That's like complex trauma where it's like it's very hard to pinpoint individual kinds. And so with EMDR, you're supposed to come up with these, like a list of all your trauma. And like, as a person who has had trauma, it's just like, it's like, therapists, do you even understand what it is to have had like trauma your whole childhood? Because I'm not going to be able to come up with a list of like 5 things. It
never stopped. I never felt sick. What do you mean? Tell me the event. It's a 10-year period.
I don't have an event. Like, okay, I can identify. Okay, my sister had a big boating accident. Okay, that's an event. But like, all the rest of the stuff was just kind of like ongoing trauma. Like, and how do you and it's
but I mean, trauma is a feeling that you can't handle so much that you have to have some kind of coping mechanism, dissociation or whatever. But because you can't feel it, it's stored, and then you have to go back and process it later. But some of that is acute, that there's a boating accident or car wreck or somebody hits me when I'm a kid or something. But a ton of it may be so nebulous that it's hard to even find or identify. Like, I had like a lot of patients that I've had, they've had parents that were real moralistic or religious, and the parent never said anything that even if you had a transcript would constitute emotional abuse. They were just always being like, you don't understand how the world is. Everyone out there is going to try and get you, and you everyone in the world, and there's all these evil forces, and look everywhere all the time, and the child is panicking and afraid of everything, but they don't even know what they're afraid. You know what I mean? Like, and that their whole experience with life is that it's scary and bad and going to hurt them. And that is the trauma, and it's not one thing. It's this nebulous, whatever. How do you target something like that?
Yeah.
And I guess EMDR or CBCT would say, turn it into a belief. But I mean, something like that is just so complex and huge. It's that somebody never felt safe anywhere in their life. And that's one of the things with complex trauma patients, a ton, the first session, is I'll ask them, do they kind of go through their history? And I'm like, is there anywhere in your life ever that you felt safe? And they'll think, and they're like, no, that is so sad. And it's like the first time that they've realized, like, oh, I went from this childhood to this relationship to this relationship to this marriage to now where I'm out and trying, and they never had any place where they felt okay.
Right, right. And that's something so nebulous that I think it's very, when I was in the middle of some punctuated acute trauma where I was going to therapy for this, like a few years ago, it's so minimizing to be asked to like put into words stuff that you've never been able, and it makes you feel like your trauma is not legitimate if you're not able to describe it to somebody. But I really think that there's also, like, we shouldn't have to describe it, because I really believe that putting language to things where our brains haven't stored them in a language place, like, I think that that's like a lower level of consciousness, and our traumas are stored in this place where it's like your brain is trying to radiate them out of you, and to put them into words, like artificial words, is like a way of crystallizing the trauma, and I think locking it in more than it needs to be, because the words are never going to even, and the words are not going to represent what, like with EMDR, where we have this, I love the list of like fears and like beliefs, faulty beliefs about yourself that you get when you do the training, like the list of, okay, is my belief I am worthless, I can't trust myself, I am going to be abandoned. Like, it's a very lovely little list to have.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but it's still like people go down the list and then they're trying to narrow down which one. So there's just like this artificiality about it, no matter how you cut it. It's somebody else's words, and you can't, like, beliefs are not necessarily stored as words. It's stored as instinct and intuition, when it's that trauma.
Or somebody could have been unconscious during a trauma. Their body remembers something that intellectually I don't have access to. They could have been drugged. You know, children make memories at different ages in ways that are pretty kind of somatic. You don't start to have like narrative dreams until you're 3 or 4. A 2-year-old will just dream like a color or an object, and then they'll say it. Like, and so like a ton of times it's never gonna be. And even if you do have that sort intellectually, and you do come across a repressed memory or something, which is not terribly common, but possible, it's never gonna. The point is never, well, is Colonel Mustard in the green room with the rope? This is what happened. You go through the emotion first. You go through the body first, and you regulate, and you get all this out. And if the memory needs to come back, it will. But it doesn't always need to come back. And that's never the point. Is trying. And that's that's where you get therapists that are kind of implanting memories and suggesting things, and because you're trying to do all this analytical stuff. There's so many people who had this just profound change, and we had a pretty good idea probably what happened to them as a kid in some environment, but the point was to get better. It wasn't to ever completely remember that experience, and in some cases, they couldn't ever completely remember that experience because they were semi-conscious, or they were using drugs or something, and it's like the memory wasn't written into the brain perfectly like a video. We think of PTSD like, we still think of PTSD as a culture like it's shot in movies, that's the firework goes off at the cookout and then somebody's like, Bob, you okay? And the footage of Vietnam plays on the tape. But it's not that. It's that my body is starting to feel like I'm angry, I need to fight, and then you say something that's a little bit off, and then that I have a out of size reaction to that, and my emotions are kind of running the show. That's it, more so than the little videotape of the bad experience that just plays and plays. The re-experiencing is real, but it's very, maybe 10% of it is visual, or prefrontal cortex memory.
Right, because your prefrontal cortex shuts down when you're in fight or flight.
Yep.
Which is why it's like we don't naturally.
It's a lack of sync. That's when my body's feeling something that I know isn't true up here, and then I keep feeling that thing. And a lot of the newer research on why brain spotting or psilocybin or a lot of the brain-based medicine works is that it's resyncing the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system so they're on the same page.
Yeah. But we don't. Yeah, it's need to do that from a higher level rather than from our intellectual level, I really think. I mean, and some of my most profound work was with clients who had, sexual abuse or neglect or things like that, where we never actually like had a session where somebody's like intimately describing being touched or, things like that. Like, it's like, you kind of like with some people, it was just like, you like talk around it, like you flow with the person and let kind of brush up against it. But like
Dave would say, be in the tail of the comet. You're going to hear that at brain spotting training a whole lot. That the patient's experience is going, and that you can kind of observe it, but you don't want to get in the way or direct it. You're just following it and letting it go with the energy.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I would see clients who I was seeing a lot of people who were presenting more with like sexual abuse and trauma, and was really loving that work, dissociative disorders. But the people who I was seeing with dissociative identity disorder had been to therapists who it felt like it sounded like to me had basically like even more crystallized the parts that were there. Like instead of integrating the parts, it's like the therapist is like it's like this self-indulgent therapy thing where it's like they're trying to get
I know exactly
overall
the
part
models
to
of
come
psychotherapy
out.
that you're talking about. Yeah, and it's where it's like I'm just going to take a borderline person and regress them down to a 2-year-old and then reenact this fight about maternal whatever with them. And I know what you mean. I've seen those, but there's not an integrative part. It's this re-experiencing of the individual part.
The parts aren't naturally coming out. They're like but parts come out to cope with something in the moment. And so if you're unnaturally dragging a part out, you're connecting. I don't know, you're connecting it to different parts of the experience that part doesn't necessarily need to be involved in. It can be very re-traumatizing to.
My experience with EMDR it was exactly what you were describing. It was like I saw it do magic for 30% of people and do nothing for the 70%, and was like, what is the part for people who this works for, and what is it really doing? And I loved the little belief list at first, and then slowly started to find that limiting. And then my practice has evolved a lot, but I was saying like, okay, I'm going to do a somatic trauma map. So we're not even going to worry about talking about the belief and the good thing and replacing whatever. We're just going to do like this whole thing of like emotionally, what does this feel like? Where is it physically in your body? How does your posture want to move? All in the person trying to get that subcortical activity. And then I would start doing the eye movements. And that's when I would notice that when the eye movement would go past a certain spot, the pupil would wibble. And so I was like, well, what if I stop here? And then people started crashing into processing. And I didn't know what it was doing. And then multiple people, EMDR was just so protocol driven. I kept paying for more trainings, and they were like, no, don't do that. Just do the 15. And I was like, but they're asking me to do it. The patient's been in EMDR forever. I've been a therapist for 2 months. I don't know what's happening. And then somebody was like, well, that sounds like brain spotting. So I paid to talk to David Grand. And David was like, yeah, you discovered exactly what I discovered. I was a brain spotting practitioner. I was an EMDR practitioner working with Shapiro. Shapiro said, if you change my model, you're not doing EMDR. And I noticed that EMDR was opening up every single brain spot a little bit. So you were starting to get the person to feel every single issue that they had.
Yeah.
A small amount, but not going all the way to the bottom of any of them. And then I could surgically go in on these different spots that the eye associates with kind of stored trauma. And it sounds cranky. I mean, if I heard myself say this 10 years ago, I'd be like, I would have turned the podcast off. It took me being in the room with patients who I really loved and cared about and was desperate to help, trying everything that I had, finding this, and it just worked, and then it worked for me. I went to the training. I didn't get anything out of EMDR at my EMDR training. I went to the brain spotting training, dissociated for 20 minutes, and had this huge, profound experience that, was very helpful and also very humbling, because it's not fun to realize how messed up we are, or it wasn't fun for me to realize too. We need to.
No, yeah, it's not. But I mean, I don't know. That's where the profound growth is, though, because underneath our pain, we have such depth. Like all the pain trauma victims have been through is just the sign of a very expansive soul. I think.
Well, and
And
like you're saying with the world, I mean, just the speed of the world right now, I feel like it makes people feel gaslit and out of control and upset and, all these things that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're being traumatized constantly, and I wish that there was better language, because trauma is it's hard to come up with another word besides trauma. But I really believe that
But it is limiting in
we
that
are
what kind of
traumatized.
trauma are you talking about?
Yeah, but I really believe that we're like traumatized by various experiences in our society. We're traumatized by various experiences, and then we're never able to come out of that fight or flight mode. So we're always in low key fight or flight mode, and then being fed these traumas. Like people,
Well, there's money in it. If the news is saying this group of people is going to come kill you and it has a big bearing on your life, I mean, probably.
Look at all these dead people, dead children, and you need to. And I don't.
It's adrenaline. Adrenaline is what's going to sell.
Right.
It's what's going to keep me clicking or reading or whatever gets the metric up that month.
But we've gotten everybody's brains so shut down. Like everyone's in fight or flight, and when your prefrontal cortex is shut down, you cannot make normal decisions. You can't make like basic decisions about your life. You can't concretely think about things, and people don't realize that this is happening. It's like, people are going about their lives just feeling so frazzled, and they don't realize that it's like, no, you're in acute trauma basically because of all this, I think we're just I think the advent of technology, it just puts in our face so much more trauma than we're ever, or so much more, in terms of current events and things like that, than we're actually meant to process as humans. Like we're, meant to care about everybody within a 10-mile radius of us, maybe. And then, and like, but outside of that, it's like, we don't, we haven't like built up the capacity we don't have the capacity to care about every single child in the whole world. Like you care.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
like,
I mean, that is true.
Sit here and grieve every single person. Like, I don't mean that in a hard line. I don't know. That sounds so cold, but it's like you can care, but when we're told you need to care about, here are 20 pictures of dead people a day that you're supposed to grieve, like they're people that and
you shut down emotionally because you can't feel it.
They're killing killing the wolves and killing the rainforest, and all these things that are so awful that we're inundated with all the time. And it just makes us so we can't even deal with the things that are actually in front of our faces. And so we're being traumatized on this national level and on this individual level. But
and they've done, I think, you're right. I mean, caring about 10 people kind of in a group is what we do. We're trying to make our brains do all this stuff that they're not designed to do. And so we're doing it imperfectly, and that stress and anxiety has to go somewhere. It has to go into alcohol or the body or to, what is anger, but like they've done studies, and it's like, and the more people that live close to you, the less people you know. I mean, somebody who lives in an apartment will not know their neighbor. Somebody who lives in rural Scotland will know the person who lives 14 miles away. Oh, Ben did,
Yeah.
When my dad wanted to go back to Ireland to encounter his heritage or whatever, and we're like trying to find the last relative, and it's kind of dark, but like we went to one guy. They're like, oh, old Ben is the one that knows all the people, and then you stop at all these farmhouses, but I mean, you're driving over 200. I don't know how long it was, but it's huge. It took all day long. The roads are slow and curvy, so it probably maybe wasn't that huge of a distance, but like the one, this guy knew everybody and could tell you whatever, and we finally ended up in the town where the last I don't remember the name. It wasn't Blackstock, but whatever, the last one was supposed to be, and they were like, oh, he drank too much whiskey last night and he fell into the fire and burned up. You should have come a week ago. It's like, oh no.
Are you serious?
Oh Lord. Yeah. So
what?
that was what the guy said.
That's a good story.
Anyway, drama.
What does it mean?
Oh, sorry. I don't know.
No, I know. I'm just,
yeah, but yeah, the more people that are around you, the less people you know, and we start to build these walls to protect ourselves. And so this inundated news stuff, it's profitable to keep people panicked all the time, but what does that do, to society, to kids over a long period of time?
Right. Makes everybody I don't know. I was about to say stupid, and my son is in kindergarten. I don't know if your daughter's in kindergarten too, but my son's always like, "Don't say stupid." They get in trouble for saying stupid in school, and I'm trying to not say stupid. And it's a good point.
This is what that means, but don't say that at school is something that we hear a lot.
Yeah, he's always screaming at me and my parents, "BB, don't say stupid." My parents are like, yeah. But like brain spotting, right? Okay, so I think what I'm excited about is that it's unlike EMDR, like you're saying, you don't have to put everything into words before you can work on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like I have this, what I experience is I always go into this, it feels like performance anxiety almost, like when somebody's asking me, like when you're asking me like, okay, what are you thinking about, or what do you want to work on? And then I just go blank.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and it's like, I always like attributed that to just like, okay, that's just me. And these are my issues and blah, blah, blah. But I think that is like I think that that's a common thing with trauma survivors, is like, you're put on the spot, like, tell me your intimate, what's on your brain. And then it's like your dissociation just is like triggered immediately. And so it's helpful for me when you're like, okay, here I can just find a brain spot and work with it, and let's see what comes of that. Like that, I feel like is really actually very deceptively powerful to be able to be like, I don't know what I'm thinking, because it's like, I don't know what I'm thinking, and then I panic, and then it's like I could, it's like I don't know, the feelings are there, like, okay, I'm gonna cry because now I'm embarrassed because I can't think of what to say, and like I'm never going to be able to think of what my trauma is to be able to advocate for myself. It like triggers all these fears, but none of which I can put into words because I like freeze. It's that, fight, flight.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing, is trauma makes you not know what is wrong. You feel like everything's wrong. And so you don't remember the event a ton of the time that got you there, or events or your period, but you're sitting there being like, I don't like that on the news. Oh, well, the waiter didn't pay attention to me. This, like, you're trying to attach the anxiety to all these things that would explain it. And then that's exhausting you, and it's driving the people around you, to be tired of that behavior a lot of the time. But you're just trying to attach this ambient anxiety that your body's holding to the thing to figure out what the problem is. And they're talking about it more with the therapist. Yeah.
Creating new neural pathways connecting to your trauma. So you're just generalizing your trauma even more than it was before, if that makes any sense. Like, I just feel like when we're creating these arbitrary connections to language structures in certain way, when language isn't already coming, like language is a tool, it's an adaptation. But if stuff is not already in language, I think a lot of the time that it crystallizes it. This is where I've just gotten so into kind of the spiritual aspect of all that stuff, and it just like keeping it, well, I don't know, I won't get into that really, but
well, I mean, and we probably don't want to keep you too long, but it's wonderful to have another co-host. But I mean, maybe like one way of saying that is that, we've got that prefrontal cortex nihilistic ego brain of you are only what you do, what you can see, taste, touch, smell, and accomplish. And then we have this kind of mystical subcortical brain that is, spiritual, maybe myopic if it's overindulged, or kind of childlike, but maybe at the risk of being childish. And from its perspective, we're all connected and everything is the Zen-like experience. And we are what we feel very much. Whereas the other one is we are only what we do. And those pieces of self don't really want to be in the same head, So much of the fights between therapy models come back to that. And I think the best models make room to hold both. And you see that kind of perennial language, like Adler says, well, it's compensation for everything big on the inside there, or on the outside, there's a big thing on the inside. And Jung says the tension of the opposites. And, I think Freud's psychology was very good at describing Freud's own psychology. Sorry.
I think good old Freud.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if that is helpful, but and that's kind of what I see is giving people permission to do both, because people feel like, well, I can't feel, that's irresponsible. I know all this stuff's true, so I can't feel that. And it's like, no, maybe you've made mistakes too, but you're still mad that this person made a mistake. It's okay to be mad. You're not going to tell them,
Yeah.
Or, you know, that the person only wants to feel, and you're having to say, yeah, I mean, you maybe have the purest heart ever, but you still have to, you know, be at work on time, or you're probably going to get fired. That's real. You know, if I was king of the world, I'd change that. I'm not, you know, um, like we can't intuit this away. Yeah. No, I don't want that job. But yeah, we can't wait to work with you. It's so excited.
I'm so excited.
And we'll have to do another episode after the brain spotting training, kind of about what your experience with it was and everything. Because that's one of the biggest questions that we get. I'm like writing that email or having that phone call for providers out of the state all the time where they're like, you said brain spotting, I'm interested. How do I do it? Where do I do it? What's it like? So probably having if I have to have the same meeting with people, you know, 10, 20 times, I usually am like, I want to shoot a podcast or a video on this topic so that I can just send you that, and then you can listen to it. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be interesting. Who did you sign up with, or who are you doing it with?
That is a great question. I can't remember her name. She's in Atlanta. But
Cynthia Schwartzberg. Synthesis.
That sounds familiar.
She's in Atlanta. That's who did mine. It was a good training.
Oh, maybe I'm okay. I can't remember. I'll tell you. I did get my book and my pointer in the mail there yesterday.
Oh yeah, they sent you the book in the phone.
Yeah,
I wish they would send you his book with ETT, because the ETT training, like, you really like it opens up so much when you read the book, but they don't. The brain spotting, sending you David's book before, is nice.
Yeah. I'm excited to look at it.
Is there like anything else you want to like tell people about your practice, or just kind of say as an introduction? And I'm really happy that we've got another, you know, voice on here, because it's probably nice for people to not just hear me opine.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, not in particular. I mean, now it's like, okay, I don't know how to put it into language, Joel.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah. I there's a lot that is hard to put into language about the changes in my perspective that have everything to do with kind of the effects of trauma really blowing up the parts of your brain that are connected to something like I really think about like the collective unconscious, like about and things like that. And people who have spiritual experiences with trauma, like that it's extremely common for people who aren't spiritual at all or aren't religious like me, to experience spiritual, like a profoundly spiritual experience associated with trauma.
That seems to be happening more and more to providers. Like, I know so many providers that are just kind of clung to this very kind of rational scientific perspective, and then all of a sudden they encounter some kind of therapy that gives them this transcendental experience, and they kind of feel humbled, you know, in a way, to sit with this other part of them, you know. Absolutely. Whatever part is repressed, the other part calls to you. Yes,
because I've never been I've always been very interested in like philosophy, but I've always identified as an atheist, and so it was just, I think it's but it made me realize, like, it is very humbling. And then I've kind of realized that a lot of the things that we just throw away as that psychosis, that's not real. And we don't really know what that means. It's just like this category of like, okay, we don't understand what that person's talking about, so we're just going to call it psychosis. But there's so many, our DNA is capable of, I mean, our bodies are capable of so much more than we,
well, the ego wants to be all we are. You know, it's very threatening to the prefrontal cortex language and time sensing brain to say, what if there's this whole other part of me?
Yeah.
Just by itself, just by its nature, it has to kind of protect itself from that.
Yeah. I think stuff like I realized, or I've learned in our society, we do everything that like, and calcifies like the pineal gland in our brain. Our pineal gland is connected to circadian rhythms and our connection to something that feels spiritual, like meaning and things like that. And our society, we really suppress the pineal gland's ability to connect to it. It has crystals in it that piezoelectric crystals that hook into, it transmits your brain waves. This is real. It's not pseudoscience, it's like real neuroscience. That we just kind of ignore. It's like something that it's like, okay, well, we know that the pineal gland does something in this realm and it makes people feel like they're
Mhm.
God. And then we just then it's like, but there's not a God. So there's nothing beyond humans. But so many people have these spiritual experiences and are trying to integrate them and reconcile them with things that have happened. And I think it's, yeah, like honoring people where people are and what they're,
Yeah, wherever they are, whatever they're.
that they're mulling over, things that are turning around in their heads. There's to honor people's experiences is like, you're not going crazy, that you are feeling like you're, yeah, you're not going crazy to suddenly feel like you're having spiritual experiences. This is normal for trauma populations, and we're not quite sure what it means, but we can work with it. Just like, we're not sure what depression means, but we work with it. We can identify some markers for depression, but we really don't. Like you're saying, that it's all kind of a metaphor. Like, what is self-esteem? It's a
You're lumping symptoms together to say maybe enough of these boxes being checked is this thing that we can label. It's Dr. Stephen Vasquez that did the ETT training for me was saying during one of the things that on the light device and some of the things that are more likely to give you a transcendental experience to treat deeper trauma, that a ton of the people are like, I'm an atheist, but I just talked to my dead wife and I don't know what that was, but thank you. I feel better. But it doesn't change anything. He's like, okay, that's fine. I'm not trying to change your mind. I was raised in the Episcopal Church, which in Alabama is kind of mystical. And the thing I liked about the Episcopal Church growing up, not every church is like that. Not every Episcopal church is like that, but the ones that I encountered, people kind of agreed that it was more important to get along and to love each other than to agree on everything. And so there were people who were incredibly literal believers, and then there were people who were very, they're atheists that believed in community and coming here, and that we were, working on this greater project of making the world better. And then there were people kind of in the middle that liked metaphor, but didn't think, I don't know, like it just, and people went there. The point was that this was a good thing. We're doing it because it's good. We don't all have to sit down and figure out exactly what we believe perfectly. There's some, theology in the Catholic, in the Episcopal Church, but usually like, when you go through, what do you call it? Confirmation or whatever, the classes are them being like, this is what Baptists think, this is what Catholics think. You can think whatever you they're like them reviewing the theology it was pretty loose.
That's how I grew up in the Episcopal Church as well, and that's also. But
my line in therapy is always just like, I'm a therapist, not a priest. And tell you I can let you go through it and make room for it, but I don't know why. I'm totally, and my why is not your why. So that's
the fine line where it's like all of a sudden I am thinking about these spiritual concepts, but I've always been so turned off and very offended by therapists who bring their own religion into therapy and bring their own,
especially without asking. There's some people that say, are you a Christian, or are you a Christian in this way? Can we pray? And the patient feels safer. I've had patients that had that experience, but when you're just bringing it in because you think that's right, I feel like that's disrespectful.
Yeah. It doesn't allow room for people to. It's kind of the levels of our psyche that really need to be restructured are these deep-seated beliefs which relate to spirituality and things like that. And when you come in as a therapist and say, well, this is the basic framework of of the truth of everything, and now let's do therapy, you're missing the really good work that you can do, which is like really going back in and helping people to structure and like restory, like, what is my basic experience of life? What are my basic beliefs, or not even beliefs, but just like the way that I am in the world and who I am. And
identity is a relationship between the self and the body and the world in this way that, what is it? David Tacey had a talk to the Sydney, Australia Young Society, and he was saying like, self is not a destination; it is a process. It is a process of you trying to contain the collective unconscious and hold on to an ego, but it is moving back and forth between these things.
It's a process. We're in time space, and requires everything be a process. If you're in the quantum field, it doesn't have to be a process, but where we are, you have to go through the motions and we have to, we do have a physical brain that needs that, there are ways to restructure it really quickly that we're learning about, but it's still, you have to move some stuff around physically. Like there's going to be process around the changes that need to happen in order for you to become actualized or transcend this reality. And I really believe that people can. We don't, in Western society, we don't acknowledge enlightenment and transcendence and actualization as being real.
And people come to therapy for different reasons. Some patients, that's never going to be part of their thing. They just want to quit biting their nails, and I can do that too. Come back if you come back when you want to do something else.
Yeah,
or
it's
don't.
lovely to see people who just need help to quit biting their nails. Although that's very difficult to do. I was as a nail biter from when I was little. It's very difficult. Difficult to break that.
It is. Well, I thank you so much for getting on today, and Alice's page will go live on our website soon if it's not up already. So if you are interested in booking with her, she's got an email on her website, on her bio page on our website if you have a question for her, and you can go ahead and get on the wait list. We're not exactly sure when you're going to start working because we got to get furniture and some practical stuff going. But it could be, as soon as next month, definitely not longer than 3 months. So.
Okay.
We'll see where we end up. But if you want to get on the wait list for Alice, our wait list is like, I don't even know where it is now. I need to ask Lily, but it was out like a year and a half. And so hopefully it'll really move now. And this would be the time to call, since a lot of times, just when you have a new therapist that's starting full time and has no patients, then generally that's a good time to
load me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited. Your practice is so cool. I'm totally.
Well, it's our practice. It's not. It's collective. It's everybody's.
Yeah, but you bring
ringleader.
Well, you're the spirit of the practice, and that's what you're doing is really, y'all are doing really cool work.
Yeah, and I can't wait for you to meet everybody because it is a cool community, and I'm really looking forward to you getting started. And now that Peak is established, and just kind of taking time to be a community again and actually sit down and run cases, because it's been a hairy 6-7 months.
Yeah.
For me, it's just been 13-hour days. I do therapy for half of it, and then the other stuff adds up. But it's a nice community. I mean, I'm proud of our practice. I feel like, one, people make more than they would have individually, which is important to me. And then two, like we all kind of have a voice and a place and have made something better together than we could have individually. Definitely better than I could have made by myself with all you guys. So I don't know. That's neat. That was always what I wanted to do since I was a kid, is somehow have community, and always wanted to be a therapist. And it's a new thing, but it's scary. When we were moving you in, though, I was realizing like we're pretty far along in this thing. Like I tend to think it pretty new, but you were asking like how many rooms was Taproot, and it's like, wow, this is actually practice now.
I know. I was like that. And yeah, just a few months ago, I was very much like, I don't think I'm going to be a therapist anymore.
Yes.
I was like trying to figure out how I relate to the field and everything. And I'm very excited about being able to move in a direction that actually feels authentic. I didn't know. I'm really excited about working with y'all.
Well, we're excited to work with you too.
My new clients. I'm so excited to meet everybody.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Alice. I appreciate it. And gettherapybirmingham.com. Again, that's gettherapybirmingham.com is where you would find more information if you're local. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast or check out the YouTube, that's where you do it. Thank y'all so much. And, reach out for anything.
Awesome. Thank you.